In the last film, it was said that it was impossible to tear down the entire wall because of a cricket in a hole in the wall. But if you look closely, you can tell that any cricket loves to eat fresh soybeans and can smell the beans a few inches away. With the premise of this cricket's habits, you can catch crickets that build their nests in holes in the wall. This method can also be summed up in 4 words, which is called the method of leading the snake out of the hole. Here's how to do it. Thread a fresh soybean on one end of a thin lead wire about a foot long, and let the bait slowly approach the cricket hole. Generally, crickets must smell the fragrance of soybeans within 3 minutes. Set the probe out of the hole to look for soybeans. At this time, you should hold your breath and carefully grasp the other end of the lead wire. Gradually move the end of the soybean through the hole step by step, guide the cricket step by step away from the hole, and then quickly block the hole in the wall. The crickets had no way out, so they could only be caught. This method is basically 9 out of 10. Gradually, the children learned what the 2 men were called. The young and thin man is called Xiaoqing, and the older and burly man is called Uncle Chu. Usually, it's just Xiaoqing shuttling back and forth between the groups of children, moving from one circle of children playing cricket to another. Uncle Chu sat far away on the stone steps in front of a certain house, holding a cigarette in his hand, seemingly carelessly but thoughtfully puffing out smoke rings. This Xiaoqing is not just watching the excitement of fighting crickets. Occasionally, when the interest comes, he will participate in the children, first carefully observe the 2 crickets that are about to fight, and then make a prediction of winning or losing. At first, we were quite unimpressed with Xiaoqing's prediction, thinking that he was just posing for old qualifications in front of our children, and he was just talking nonsense. But later it turned out that although Xiaoqing's prediction was not 100% accurate, it was not far from 10. When Xiaoqing and we got acquainted, the children took the initiative to invite Xiaoqing to make a prediction for the 2 crickets that we were about to fight. Although we know that Xiaoqing's prediction is accurate, we often hope that Xiaoqing's prediction will fail, especially the children who are predicted to be defeated, and they are very unconvinced and full of hope that they will win. What surprised us was that whenever Xiaoqing's prediction failed, Xiaoqing would beg the children on both sides to temporarily stop the next round of cricket fighting, and use gestures to beckon Uncle Chu, who was sitting in the distance. At this time, Uncle Chu staggered over, first smiled affectionately at all of us, and then picked up the cricket jar and carefully studied the 2 crickets that Xiaoqing had failed to predict. This process usually takes about 5 minutes or so. Sometimes Uncle Chu would take out a delicately made magnifying glass from the bag he carried with him and carefully observe the head of the cricket. Usually, after Uncle Chu has seen crickets, he will say to the children, "Sorry for the interruption, you continue to play," and turn to leave. But there were also a few times when Uncle Chu did not leave immediately after watching the crickets, but stood quietly outside the children's circle with Xiaoqing, and waited until the children were about to leave. Xiaoqing would take the initiative to greet the little owner of a cricket, so a transaction happened between the child owner of the cricket and Uncle Chu. Uncle Chu and Xiaoqing exchange crickets with our children are rarely money, but often some of the children's favorite gadgets, such as clay pots for crickets, nets for catching crickets, bamboo tubes for temporary storage of crickets, and small ceramic basins for crickets to drink, etc. Don't underestimate these gadgets. None of these things were not elaborately made. For example, the crescent-shaped ceramic basin for crickets to drink, often engraved with miniature ancient landscapes or ladies, which at a glance could tell that they were not produced in the society of the time, the late Cultural Revolution, but were the product of the late Qing dynasty before liberation or more afield. These things are spread in the folk countryside, and I don't know how Uncle Chu bought them. Of course, we children didn't know the value of these things at the time. We only knew that these things couldn't be bought with money in the market, and playing with crickets with these toys was like the icing on the cake, and it was very good to show off among other children. It can be said that at this point, Uncle Chu and Xiaoqing have thoroughly understood the psychology of our group of children. However, there is one point: Uncle Chu and Xiaoqing never coerce when exchanging things for crickets. Even if a child is unwilling to exchange, Uncle Chu will still leave a bamboo tube for crickets as a gift. Over time, the children naturally developed a sense of trust and intimacy with Uncle Chu. Perhaps it was Uncle Chu's free and bold personality that attracted my cousin and me, so that one year during the cricket season, when Uncle Chu and Xiaoqing came to the door to ask for help, we readily agreed. It wasn't until I later interacted with Uncle Chu that I learned that in the little spiritual insect of crickets, our ancestors left us great knowledge and unsolved questions. Dear friends, this episode of Brother Zhang's story has been broadcasted. The next episode will continue to publish 2 days later at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to hit like it and press subscribe button before you go. Thank you.